VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And friends, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. It's our Friday news roundup and comment. We've got so many stories, so many issues that are breaking not only here across the United States, but around the world as well. First of all, a guest on our program here as we get started, Congressman Tiffany with us today on the broadcast. He represents Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District, first elected to Congress in a special election in 2020, and has served since. He sits on the House Committee on Natural Resources and the House Committee on the Judiciary. Also announced his candidacy for the governor of Wisconsin. And Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Jim, it's a real pleasure to join you today.
So, Congressman Tiffany, the House just recently passed. Yesterday, the Senate cleared a three-bill spending package. I know that's only half of the appropriation bills necessary, and there's concern that we might be facing another government shutdown in just a couple of weeks on January 30th. Your thoughts on where things stand right now?
Well, we hope that doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen. It's really going to be the choice of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats of whether that is going to happen. And but we diligently keep working through these appropriations bill. There's 12 in total. And like you said, we're about halfway through. I think most of them, there's pretty good agreement to be able to get that done, but we got one or two that are hanging out there yet that maybe they end up being, maybe there ends up being one more continuing resolution. But whether the government shuts down or not is going to be the choice of the Democrats because we're steadily working through it as the Republican majorities.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one of the more contentious funding bills, it deals with the funding of the Department of Homeland Security. You're well aware what's happening across the country right now with immigration and customs enforcement. The question is, can this get done? For instance, I see the Daily Caller is reporting on the other side of the aisle in the House here, Representative Ilhan Omar, and nearly saying that she and nearly 100 of her colleagues are vowing to defund ICE and Customs and Border Protection. I thought, isn't that how we got into this mess to begin with? Not allowing our agents to do their job?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so they view it as a political winner at this point, so they're going to do whatever they can. And plus their base insists on it. I mean, you have this hard left, small cadre of the Democrat base, call it the progressive left, that they want to fight, and they want to fight every single day. And one of the hills they'll die on is that the United States should have open borders and no one should ever have to leave the country. And you mentioned Ilhan Omar. I mean, part of the reason for the troubles in Minneapolis is the billions of dollars. The U.S. Attorney's Office estimates it could be as much as $9 billion that has been built from the taxpayers of Minnesota and the United States that have been sent to places like Somalia fraudulently under the guise of daycare programs, even autism programs they're defrauding. And that's what started all this trouble to begin with in Minnesota. And you have people like Omar and Governor Walz, Mayor Fry in Minneapolis, that they want to stand up for the lawbreakers.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like you to further comment about what we see unfolding in Minneapolis. We've had an influx of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, ICE, that has come into Minneapolis. You've seen the riots. You've seen the mayhem, the threats against ICE. Your overall comments on what's unfolding in Minneapolis?
Yeah, so my district abuts the Twin Cities. Hudson, Wisconsin, far western Wisconsin is in my district, only about 20 miles from Minneapolis. So my constituents see this very clearly. Many of them work in the Twin Cities. And this is all part of the failure of two once great cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. Their decline is precipitous. I grew up in the shadow of the Twin Cities in western Wisconsin. Always two great cities, but they have fallen so far. And it's because this lawlessness has been allowed to happen by Democrats. And as I mentioned, you have the fraud that's been going on. But remember what's at the very heart of this, and that is the 10 million people that came in illegally in the previous 4 years. Some of them coming from places like Venezuela, where they emptied their prisons. You know that there's many lawbreakers that came into our country. It's the job of Immigration and Customs Enforcement to remove those people. They're statutorily required to. And yet you have the leadership in Minnesota that is defending the lawbreakers rather than insisting that they leave the country. And if I could just say one further thing, Jim, you notice most places around America are not having that trouble. There's a few places like Minneapolis and Los Angeles and Chicago that have chosen to make this a big deal. ICE has been working throughout the United States to remove people that are here illegally, oftentimes have committed violent crimes, either in their home country or the United States, and it happens seamlessly. It's just in these places that are insisting that they in effect want to break the law as the political leaders of their jurisdiction.
We're talking right now with Congressman Tom Tiffany, who represents Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District. Congressman, as you know, President Trump, he's threatening the Insurrection Act in Minnesota. In your opinion, is that taking the matter too far?
There's no reason for it to come to that. All that has to happen is Governor Walz and Mayor Frey need to follow the law. I mean, it is federal law. And to a certain extent, I mean, this harkens back to the Confederacy, where they're making the same arguments, they being Walz and Mayor Frey, they're making the same arguments the Confederates did back in the 1850s. So it's the strangest thing. And even our governor, a very liberal governor here in Wisconsin, has backed off from this whole notion that you can't follow federal law. This is federal law. It needs to be enforced. The people voted for it in November of 2024.
You're running for governor in Wisconsin here, and you just referenced the current governor, Tony Evers, and as it relates to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, he said he's making preparations for ICE and that he's worried about the thousands of those who are here in Wisconsin illegally. How, as governor, would your response be different? You work actively with law enforcement, whether it's local, county, or state, or federal law enforcement. You work with them to make sure that the job is being done appropriately. So my question is, he and his lieutenant governor, are they going to stop, for example, the woman that was beaten in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, by an illegal alien, the two young people that were killed by an illegal alien, repeat offense, drunk driver driving the wrong way on an interstate, or the people in Delafield, Wisconsin, who've been burglarized by South American gang members? Are they saying, as leaders of Wisconsin, they're not going to allow ICE to be able to do that job? Because they're simply doing their job of removing people who have broken the law, no different than your county sheriff. Yeah, there's been a whole lot of attention that's sparked this in Minnesota. You pointed it out, the whole matter of the food stamp fraud. What actions need to be taken to get to the bottom of this, especially in light of now we have a federal judge just Wednesday that blocked the Trump administration from imposing new fraud controls on Minnesota's food stamps. And we're told what's going on in Minnesota is maybe the tip of the iceberg and pointing out other states where this fraud is taking place. How do we get to the bottom of this? How do we right this ship?
I think that is correct, that the fraud is happening all over the country, not just in blue states, though it's the worst in blue states. California is, I think we're going to find out, is the white whale of fraud that is going on. But we need to get it under control. What's going to happen is, like so many other court cases, where you have these rogue judges that make these rulings that make no sense. It'll be appealed by the administration, and they're going to win at the appellate or Supreme Court level. There is no reason why the Trump administration should not be able to eliminate fraud and abuse. And think about how bad it was in Minnesota. It's been in Minnesota. The Somalis in Minneapolis, which there's a significant population, they have been sending money back literally in suitcases to Somalia that has been stolen from the taxpayers via fraudulent means, from programs like food programs, housing, even autism programs they've used to bilk the taxpayer. This has been going on all over America, and it needs to stop. And the Trump administration, to their credit, is attempting to do that.
Are you concerned by what appears to be the abolishment of the rule of law, the vigilantism, that's taken place in cities across this country?
I alluded to earlier to it gives off echoes of the Confederacy, that they would say federal law will not apply to us when we choose that it shall not apply to us. That's not how the law works.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have the law changed, then get it changed.
There is something going to happen as you're running for governor of Wisconsin. Earlier, we mentioned that bid for governor, and our current governor, by use of his veto pen, established a 400-year tax for schools, for taxpayers to increase the funding for schools every year for 400 years. It seems like this has taken it to a whole new level. I know there's going to be a constitutional amendment for citizens of Wisconsin to vote on, but again, give us your thoughts on that's unfolding in Wisconsin, where the governor and supported by his colleagues in the House and Senate in Wisconsin, the Democratic Party there, giving really their endorsement for him to do what he did.
Yeah, talk about death and taxes. He used his veto authority, I think inappropriately, to make it a 400-year property tax increase. I can just tell you, Jim, that if I'm elected as governor in my very first budget, that 400-year veto will go away so that we reduce property taxes, and then we're going to freeze them. Because when we talk about affordability, one of the number one things is the taxes you pay on your home. People's home is oftentimes their biggest investment in their lifetime. And to tax them out of their home is simply wrong. We are going to get control of property taxes. I was in the legislature 10 years ago when we did exactly that.
We have just a minute left, and turning back to your role as Congressman, what do you see as being the greatest challenge facing the U.S. Congress at this time?
It is getting control of the deficit. At least for me, it is. It's when I was first elected to the state legislature in Wisconsin, we had a $3 billion deficit, and I made it my mission to help fix that, and we did that. I helped write 3 of the budgets over the course of a decade that accomplished that, and I think the same is here. You cannot continue with this debt and deficits and expect to be a prosperous country. I mean, it's what led to the high cost of living, the inflation that has happened. When a dollar is worth 5 years ago is now worth 80 cents. We have to get control of the debt and deficit. And by the way, to the credit of the Trump administration and this Congress, we've started to take a few bites. Not enough. Mm-hmm. There needs to be more, but at least been some of the beginnings of some fiscal responsibility.
And I understand there's a second wave in the works anyways, as far as reducing that?
Yeah, I sure hope that we can do more. We have another reconciliation bill that we can do. I hope we do that and deal with the deficit as well as getting people more options for their health care.
Congressman Tom Tiffany with us. Thank you so much for carving out this quarter hour to join us today.
Good to join you, Jim.
And friends, Congressman Tom Tiffany represents Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District, running for governor in the state of Wisconsin. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, does evolution ever go backwards or reverse itself?
Chris, I don't think evolution occurs at all. God created each basic category of life. They may have varied, but this is not evolution. For evolution, you have to have new genes, new traits, new body parts, not just variety of the old. Sometimes evolutionists claim that evolution reverses itself and goes backwards. For instance, some are now claiming that the chimps, which are basically tree dwellers, descended from a missing link which walked upright, therefore backwards evolution. Chris, I think this is just as wrong as evolution in general is wrong. The evidence supports the biblical truth that man and apes are separate. There's variety among both, but they did not have a common ancestor. And that's just what we read when we go back to Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
Listening to Crosstalk here on the VCY American Network. We're so glad that you have joined us. And that was Congressman Tom Tiffany with us during that first segment today, as he is also running for governor in the state of Wisconsin, and very interesting congressional perspective on things. As we continue on with our news roundup from the New York Post, Iran has issued a sickening threat against President Trump, broadcasting a picture of the commander-in-chief during the 2024 Butler rally assassination attempt with the words, "This time it will not miss the target." The ominous warning that was aired on Iranian state-run television. It marks Tehran's most direct threat yet against President Trump, following his repeated threats that the U.S. will strike the country if it continues its brutal crackdown on anti-government protesters. Iran has made threats to kill President Trump in the past, including a 2022 video posted by the regime depicting an assassination attempt on the president at his Mar-a-Lago golf course prior to the 2024 election. The Justice Department also said that in 2024, the U.S. thwarted an Iranian-led plot to kill Mr. Trump after arresting Farhad Shakari, who was allegedly tasked by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps to murder the president for the regime. That's according to court documents. But not only that, but another threat now coming from Iran as a senior Iranian general. This coming to us here from Newsmax. Senior Iranian general has issued a direct threat against President Trump, saying that Iran would cut off his hand and his finger. That is after the president's warning of U.S. military action against this Middle Eastern regime. They say this, and I quote, "Trump has said his hand is on the trigger. We will cut off his hand and his finger." General Mohsen Mazei had said. He's a senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps general, member of Iran's Expediency Council, said that in a public address yesterday, according to a report from Iran International. He also warned that Iran would not accept a ceasefire if it were attacked. FoxNews.com, the U.S. has designated 3 branches of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations in a move that could impact Washington's relationships with Qatar and Turkey. The Treasury and State Departments announced the moves against the Lebanese, Jordanian, and Egyptian chapters of the group, which the Trump administration asserts pose a risk to the United States. These designations reflect the opening actions of an ongoing sustained effort to thwart Muslim Brotherhood chapters, violence, and destabilization wherever it occurs, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in a statement. Lord willing, this coming Monday, Usama Daktak will be joining us here on Crosstalk. My, oh my, there is a new document coming out from the Council on American Islamic Relations about total infiltration throughout the United States. We'll delve more into that on Monday's Crosstalk, Lord willing. The Washington Examiner telling us President Donald Trump, his administration on Thursday announced sanctions against more than 20 Iranian individuals and entities responsible for the Islamic Republic's deadly crackdown on protesters and skirting of international sanctions on the country's oil output. The president previously promised to help protesters after the Iranian government responded to nationwide demonstrations by killing thousands of its own citizens. But on Wednesday, the president told reporters at the White House that Iranian government officials had promised to stop killing protesters, signaling that he was moving away from imminent military action against the regime. Well, Newsmax reporting now, after weeks of escalating tension, the U.S. and Iranian officials faced each other Thursday, that's yesterday, at the UN Security Council, where America's envoy renewed threats against the Islamic Republic, despite President Trump's efforts to lower the temperature. The U.S. was joined by Iranian dissidents in rebuking the government's bloody crackdown on nationwide protests that activists say have killed at least 2,677 people, but some estimates have put the death toll at 12,000 or more individuals. Meanwhile, from NewsNationNow.com, the Pentagon moving a carrier strike group from the South China Sea to the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility that includes the Middle East as tensions escalate between the Trump administration and Iran. Then moving this carrier strike group, a naval formation centering around an aircraft carrier with a variety of other vessels, including at least one attack submarine, is expected to take about a week, a source said. The USS Abraham Lincoln reportedly is the aircraft carrier that is on the move. AllIsraelNews.com is reporting that exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi said Wednesday in a post to social media that a post-Islamic Republic of Iran under his leadership would renew ties with the U.S. and Israel. In the video message, Pahlavi said that Iran is identified in your minds with terrorism, extremism, and poverty. The real Iran is a different Iran, a beautiful, peace-loving, and flourishing Iran, he said, and would end its threatening nuclear weapons program. He indicated support for terrorist groups will cease immediately. A free Iran will work with regional and global partners to confront terrorism, organized crime, drug trafficking, and extremist Islamism. A lot of that all took place with the regime change under the Carter administration, moving from the Shah here to the Ayatollahs. Also, there's an interesting post that took place as well. That is Israel to Iran. If you attack us, we will end you for good. This is an Israeli security official said if Iran attacks, there won't be another round after that. Daily Caller telling us the Trump administration Wednesday announced the launch of the second phase of the 20-point peace plan for Gaza, seeking to shore up the fragile ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said the new phase transitions Gaza from a temporary truce toward demilitarization, technocratic governance, and long-term reconstruction. Well, friends, as we turn our attention now, we spoke with the Congressman Tiffany here just a bit ago in regard to Minneapolis, but these protests have been coming all over the country. I'm going to take you to New York City right now, in which crowds came together. This is just a day after the ICE agents were threatened by a vehicle, shot the individual driving the vehicle, and was killed in Minneapolis. But crowds in New York City gathered in Foley Square to protest what they called unnecessary violence. Now, they're protesting what they call unnecessary violence, but when you listen to their chants, they are chanting Christy Noem will hang, and then save a life, kill an ICE. Listen. Sound like mostly peaceful protests to you folks taking place in New York City and other places across the country? Save a life, kill an ICE? And now we have also this coming, Governor Walz of Minnesota. He addressed his state just a couple nights ago, encouraging residents really to track, harass ICE agents who are enforcing our immigration laws. I mean, he's telling them, get out your phones and film this. Here's Governor Walz.
Help us establish a record of exactly what's happening in our communities. You have an absolute right to peacefully film ICE agents as they conduct these activities. So carry your phone with you at all times. And if you see these ICE agents in your neighborhood, take out that phone and hit record. Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans, not just to establish a record for posterity, but to bank evidence for future prosecution.
Yeah, peaceful. Have you seen these peaceful putting out of these phones as agitators are there to come against the ICE officials? It is staggering to see what is taking place. Pamela Geller advised that 4 articles of impeachment just filed against Tim Walz in the Minnesota House. Number 1, allowed massive fraud despite being warned. Number 2, engaged in the cover-up. Number 3, let agencies keep running with 0 new safeguards. And number 4, ignored safeguards and failed to force compliance with the anti-fraud rules. He nearly became the nation's vice president, has been brought up on 4 articles of impeachment, having already suspended his campaign for re-election. This, though, a stunning development. From FoxNews.com, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem fired back at Democrats on Sunday amid an Illinois lawmaker's push to impeach her following this deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis last week. Noam also blasted Democrats for allegedly using the death of Renee Nicole Good, who was fatally shot by an ICE officer after accelerating a vehicle toward him last week to divide the country and push an agenda she says that would undermine freedom and liberties. Also, we understand from WND.com that there have been those who have exploded, all these protesters exploding over the situation that developed in Minneapolis, where an anti-ICE protester involved herself in a situation involving illegal immigration and federal officers, and according to videos was told to get out of her vehicle, but instead drove at a federal officer. Well, he appears to have been struck by the vehicle, and he responded with multiple shots that killed Renee Good, but under state law, that's exactly the right precedent. Minnesota law cited was Minnesota Law 609.066 that allows deadly force by officers if they see a life-threatening danger. From the Western Journal, the ICE enforcement agent injured during last week's fatal shooting of Renee Good suffered internal bleeding, according to officials. The agent, veteran Jonathan Ross, was struck by Good's vehicle during the Minneapolis incident. Those officials said Ross experienced internal bleeding in his torso following the encounter. The extent of the bleeding was not immediately clear, according to the report. Also, coming to us from the Washington Times, the Department of Homeland Security has challenged Tim Walz to start cooperating with ICE to turn over illegal immigrants with criminal records from his prison jails, saying he's released hundreds of them back out onto the streets over the past year. No wonder why there's so much mayhem. DHS said nearly 470 were released since President Trump took office, and the department said Minnesota is holding more than 1,360 others known who are subject to a deportation detainer. They're saying you need to detain those for us. Daily Caller is reporting the Department of Homeland Security said Wednesday that an agent from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement shot an illegal immigrant from Venezuela after being ambushed. DHS said the illegal immigrant who had been released into the U.S. by the Biden administration in 2022 tried to flee from the agents. The law enforcement officer caught up to the subject on foot, attempted to apprehend him when the subject began to resist and violently assault the officer. The statement said while the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, two subjects came out of the nearby apartment, also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and broom handle. As the officer was being ambushed and attacked by the two individuals, the original subject got loose, began striking the officer with a shovel or broomstick, the statement continued. Fearing for his life and safety as he was being ambushed by three individuals, the officer fired a defensive shot to defend his life. The initial subject was hit in the leg. In 2025, assaults against ICE agents increased by 1,300%. While attacks using motor vehicles rose 3,200%, and death threats against ICE agents went up 8,000%. That's according to a January 8th release by the Department of Homeland Security. Friends, we're going to have some more stories following the break here on Crosstalk. It's a News Roundup Friday, and yes, a lot of focus has been given on some of the major hot spots as what's happening with Iran and then also what's happening in Minneapolis and uprisings taking place across the nation as well. We'll be back in 1 minute. This is Crosstalk coming your way from the VCY American Network.
When it comes to eternity, most people assume they will go to heaven thinking their good deeds will outweigh their bad and God will allow them entrance. At most funerals, people will console one another saying they are in a better place. But how do you know that? How do you know if you will be in a better place? In the book, Are You Going to a Better Place? Author Richard Schmidt presents how you can know for sure that your sins are forgiven and you are on your way to heaven. See, after you die, there will be no negotiation with God. The scriptures provide the one way today that God's justice can be satisfied, guaranteeing that you will be in an eternal dwelling place with Him. One copy of this book is available for a donation of $10, 3 copies for $25, or 5 copies for a donation of $35. Call VCY 1-800-729-9829.
Friends, more and more as we go through these News Roundup Fridays, we see all that's unfolding through the course of a week. It just really looks like we are approaching the times of Noah, where every man did evil continuously. The violence was on the increase, and people followed after the imaginations of their hearts. And when you see there are those who are agitating these crowds and again calling with these chants on hanging Kristi Noem and to kill an ICE agent, it is just off the charts. Well, a lot of this beginning, of course, with the what was revealed by a YouTuber dealing with a fraud in the Somali daycare centers, etc., in Somali neighborhoods in Minneapolis area. And Ilhan Omar was recently on CBS, I believe it was this past Sunday, brushing aside this Somali fraud scandal, saying it's Trump, she said, trying to create fear. Here's just a brief excerpt from her interview on CBS.
Treasury Secretary Bessent called Minnesota ground zero for what may be the most egregious welfare scam in our nation's history to date. 85 of the 98 people who were charged by the Justice Department with this welfare scheme are Somali. And you know this. The Treasury Secretary is probing whether any of the money was somehow funneled outside the country. He actually issued new standards. He's going to make it make someone disclose if they receive public assistance when they try to wire money out of the country, and he's lowered the bar for suspicious activity. What is the practical impact of doing that in the community?
It's just creating fear. What they are doing is creating confusion, chaos, trying to intimidate people from being able to exercise their regular, normal activities that they would. There is no justification in any of the things that they say. The 87 people that you've described as being investigated, many of them adjudicated, all happened under the Biden administration. There is no justification for this search. We know that ICE has the ability to conduct raids. Yeah. There is no reason to have over 2,000 people coming in to our city and creating the level of terror that they have created.
Well, the administration argues that they have to do it because the state failed to, right?
The federal government and the state have been working peacefully together and have brought justice to these 87 people that you've described.
You know, it's really amazing here to see what's going on, and the agents are the ones causing the terror. And when we realize, I have seen some of the charts and stats that have come from Department of Homeland Security regarding the things that such individuals have been charged with and taken off the streets. It is astounding. The assaults that have been taking place, the issue of not just physical assaults but sexual assaults and many heinous crimes that have been committed. And what's interesting is this conversation, so to speak, the rhetoric heating up across the nation, where we have the sheriff of Philadelphia, Rochelle, I believe it's Bilal, but she's a Muslim convert, and she appeared alongside the pro-crime Soros DA Larry Krasner to bluster about fighting any efforts at federal immigration law enforcement. She ranted incoherently that ICE was fake and wannabe law enforcement and threatened if they want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will whisk you off. You don't want the smoke because we will bring it to you. The criminal in the White House will not be able to keep you from going to jail. Here's also what the sheriff had to say in part.
And so we stand here today with all those who stand against the made-up, fake, what you can call ICE, professional law enforcement. I don't call them none of that. Because when you do it there, you're getting arrested.
Well, if you're going to do it there, you're going to get arrested. And interesting comment there. Let's also go back to the White House, where we have the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, turned the tables on a leftist journalist in the White House briefing just yesterday. Here's what happened.
How does that equate to them doing everything correctly?
Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed it unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat. But you're pretending like you're a journalist, but you're a left-wing activist. And the question that you just raised and your answer proves your bias. You should be reporting on the facts. You should be reporting on the cases. Do you have the numbers of how many American citizens were killed at the hands of illegal aliens who ICE is trying to remove from this country? I bet you don't. I bet you didn't even read up on those stories. I bet you never even read about Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungray or all of the innocent Americans who were killed at the hands of illegal aliens in this country. And the brave men and women of ICE are doing everything in their power to remove those heinous individuals and make our communities safer. And shame on people like you in the media who have a crooked view and have a biased view and pretend like you're a real honest journalist.
That happened yesterday in the White House. From the Free Beacon, when the Trump administration sent some 2,000 immigration agents to the Twin Cities area, they were met by activists who trailed their movements, harassed them outside their hotels. Activists are members of radical groups that together have received millions of dollars from the left's premier foundations and dark money networks, reports the Free Beacon. They include George Soros's Open Society Foundations, they report, the Ford Foundation, the Tides Foundation, and the 1630 Fund, a Washington Free Beacon review found. At the center of the unrest is the Sunrise Movement, a left-wing group founded to fight climate change. Sunrise is bankrolled by a who's who of deep-pocketed left-wing organization. Open Society Foundations has sent it $2 million since 2019. The Ford Foundation contributed $150,000. The MacArthur Foundation, the 12th largest private charity in America, gave $250,000 in 2024. Sunrise Twin Cities has collaborated with two other local groups to drive anti-ICE demonstrations. Unidos Minnesota and Defend the 612. Also interesting to see that funding behind all of this. From the Geller report, Pamela Geller says that during the riots in Minneapolis, protesters have forced open a weapons locker in a federal vehicle, stealing a rifle and ammunition before fleeing in a black Ford Taurus with, and she identifies the license plate. Video footage captured in the thief's face, including a man with facial tattoos and the getaway vehicle details that were forwarded to the FBI for identification. Some reports indicate additional theft of sensitive documents containing DHS agent information. The violent unrest surrounding ICE operations, particularly in Minneapolis, is not a spontaneous grassroots protest, but a coordinated political campaign designed to delegitimize federal immigration enforcement and provide confrontation. From townhall.com, anti-ICE activists have been distributing tire-deflating devices and instructions to their fellow agitators in Minneapolis in hopes of hindering immigration enforcement operations in the city, a local politician revealed. The devices are 3D printed tire drainers distributed in a neighborhood near the University of Minnesota with attached instructions and a link to the design file. From NewsNationNow.com, as we mentioned earlier with Congressman Tiffany, President Trump yesterday threatened to use the Insurrection Act in Minnesota as tensions escalated after another shooting involved of a federal officer. And if the corrupt politicians, this is a writing that he put on social media, he said if the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. End of quote from President Trump. Well, another story here from WND.com, with Minneapolis remaining ground zero for anti-ICE attacks in the wake of the killing of leftist activist Renee Good by an ICE officer last week. There are now reports that up to 70 city police officers are now seeking paid leave as morale is said to be at an all-time low. We're hearing from multiple sources that dozens of police officers, 60 to 70 so far, have turned in paperwork for Minnesota's new paid leave program, reports Liz Collin of Alpha News. It allows up to 20 weeks of paid leave for personal or family reasons, and comes at a time when morale is said to be at an all-time low. On January 7th, David Titus of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association said, quote, irresponsible rhetoric from political leaders attacking law enforcement has real and dangerous consequences for officers on the street. When officers are vilified, demonized, or used as political props, it adds hostility, emboldens bad actors, and puts lives directly at risk. Let's see, from the Daily Signal, while a massive welfare fraud scandal in Minnesota has garnered national attention, lawmakers are poised to examine new ways to prevent long-standing fraudulent use of tax dollars before it happens. The federal government loses between $231 billion and $521 billion in taxpayer dollars each year to fraud. That's according to the Government Accountability Office. Sessions said a key problem in preventing fraud has been the pay-and-chase method, meaning that the government detects fraud and after it pays out the benefits, then pursues the money. The name of the game is to stop the fraud before it starts, because once the money is paid out, it's almost impossible to get it back, Sessions said. Okay, from the Headline News USA, it's not just Somali nationals in Minnesota who've been charged in a wide-scale scheme to defraud taxpayer-funded federal welfare programs. Haitian and Yemeni immigrants have also been charged with stealing tens of millions of dollars from the SNAP, that's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, during the Biden administration. And Washington Stand reporting the ongoing federal funds fraud scandal that is continuing to develop in Minnesota. It expanded Monday as the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development announced that over $84 million in taxpayer dollars meant for housing assistance for the poor was illegally obtained by fraudsters. The HUD investigation found that in fiscal year 2024, under the Biden administration, the agency distributed $84.6 million in potentially erroneous payments, including almost $500,000 to 509 deceased tenants. In addition, approximately $246,000 was dispersed to 20 individuals without Social Security numbers, indicating that they were likely non-citizens. And SlayNews.com reporting the House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer revealed that radical Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar is a lead suspect in the sweeping investigations into Somali-led fraud involving taxpayer-funded daycare and health care programs in Minnesota. According to Comer, Omar sits at the top of the suspect list. Any members of Congress that's getting any money unethically or illegally, that's an ethics committee, and it's bipartisan, Comer said. It's an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, and that's the committee that's supposed to investigate members of Congress. And Western Journal telling us that the Trump administration is ending temporary protected status for Somalians in the United States. TPS allows individuals from a country where war or other forms of unrest are taking place to remain in the U.S. when they would not be eligible to be admitted through other immigration programs. Well, the Department of Homeland Security said TPS for this group will end on March the 17th. And FoxNews.com reporting President Trump saying starting February 1st, we're not making any payments to sanctuary states or cities having sanctuary cities, cities or sanctuary states that do everything possible to protect criminals at the expense of the American citizens. And it breeds fraud and crime and all that other problems that come. So we're not making any payments to anybody that supports sanctuary, he said. Well, friends, we're up against a quick break. I've got more stories, and in light of having the Congressman on earlier today, I'm going to use our final segment to keep you further informed on some of these critical issues. I've got an audio clip you've just got to hear from the Canadian Prime Minister Carney. That will be coming in this segment as well. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Can I challenge you for 2026 to study with me or on your own the book of Daniel? On Sunday night, I started my verse-by-verse study through the book of Daniel. We just finished up Revelation after a year and a half. Daniel is such a wonderful book. Not only is it the foundation for Revelation, but Daniel is confronting many things we confront today, such as living for God in a pagan culture. How about persecution? You've heard of course, the fiery furnace, the lion's den, but yet also how to be an example to the unbeliever, even pagan leaders. The book of Daniel is one of the most attacked books because of predictive prophecy. The experts, so-called, want to bring it 400 years into the future to say that it's history, not predictive prophecy. But we know that it was written before the events occurred, showing the supernatural nature of God's word. This year, study, will you, the book of Daniel. I'm Brandon House.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Yes, a news roundup day on Friday, and much taking place. Just going to continue on, again, in light of that first 15 minutes with Congressman Tiffany, just to keep you informed. A Gateway pundit reporting that the O'Keefe Media Group Tuesday released a video of a Secret Service agent assigned to J.D. Vance leaking sensitive information to an undercover reporter. The agent at the center of O'Keefe's latest sting is Thomas Escato, is a Biden holdover, has only been a U.S. citizen since 2018. He told the O'Keefe Media Group undercover reporters details about how Vance is surrounded and revealed advanced security procedures. The Secret Service agent also revealed Vance's future travel plans and sent images from Air Force Two while he was traveling with Vance. Thomas Escato said he voted for Joe Biden and opposes the Trump administration's ICE operations. According to James O'Keefe, Escato was placed on administrative leave and a security clearance has been suspended. The Epoch Times reporting the FCC has granted Elon Musk founded Space Exploration Holdings, LLC, more well known as SpaceX, the authorization to advance its second-generation Starlink satellite system through deploying an additional 7,500 satellites, according to a January 9th news release from the agency. The announcement marks a significant milestone in global broadband connectivity, with the latest deployment taking the total number of SpaceX satellites to 15,000 nationwide. Okay, let's go to Breitbart. New York City's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohan Mamdani is outraged over federal officials detaining a city council staffer accused of overstaying his visa after being involved in an assault case. Mamdani addressed the situation in a social media post, writing, "I am outraged to hear a New York City Council employee was detained in Nassau County by federal immigration officials at a routine immigration appointment. This is an assault on our democracy, on our city, and our values. I'm calling for his immediate release and will continue to monitor the situation." However, federal officials said the man overstayed a 2017 tourist visa and was arrested in an assault case. Also, FoxNews.com, an illegal immigrant from Afghanistan previously convicted of trying to kill his teenage sister for being a bad Muslim girl was arrested. Wahid Allah Mohammed was taken into custody in Rochester, New York, ICE has said. And ICE is arresting the worst of the worst. That is exactly what we mean, said ICE Director Todd Lyons. Speaking of Mamdani, Live Action reporting that he has just appointed a former Planned Parenthood attorney as the chair of the city's Commission on Human Rights. Do you see the irony? The human rights of a baby are denied. And here we have a former Planned Parenthood attorney now sitting on the city's Commission on Human Rights. Troubling story here from Daily Caller. Google is emailing 13-year-olds instructing them how to remove parental controls without consent from their parents. Google's policy permits children to graduate from parental controls as soon as they turn 13, eliminating any safe search filters parents have applied to block access to inappropriate content and preventing parents from supervising their kids' internet activity. Child safety advocates are sounding the alarm after screenshots of the email went viral online accusing the company of predatory practices and grooming kids. Let me find this clip here. It is an amazing clip that is coming to us out of Canada with Canada's Prime Minister making a special statement here as it relates to a new world order. This is in partnership. He has declared a new world order. This is during a friendly visit to China yesterday, where he also praised the leadership of President Xi Jinping. It's a multi-day visit to the U.S. and kicked off Wednesday, expected to attend a lunch today with him. And just want you to hear what Prime Minister Carney had to say.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Wow. This new partnership with China setting us up for the new world order. Incidentally, the World Economic Forum has a full week of meetings taking place next week. From the Free Beacon, Kamala Harris warned in 2023 that to live in a coastal community is to live on the front lines of the climate crisis. Well, the failed presidential candidate reporting for duty now, she and her husband, Doug Emhoff, have just purchased an $8 million oceanside mansion in Malibu. Let me also say House Oversight Committee preparing to hold the Clintons in contempt after they have refused to testify in the congressional probe into Jeffrey Epstein. That's taking place. Pennsylvania, this is from the Daily Caller, Pennsylvania saw a meteorite-type rise in the number of adolescents receiving puberty blockers through an insurance billing code, currently being investigated under the Trump administration on fraud suspicions. They're talking about skyrocketing numbers of young people that are getting so-called gender-affirming care and billing the insurance coverage for sex-rejecting interventions. Also, Saskatchewan, Canada, LifeSiteNews.com government data has revealed that irreversible gender transitioning surgeries skyrocketing the past 5 years in Saskatchewan. San Antonio, Texas, unbelievable. They are trying to skirt Governor Abbott, find a loophole. The city of San Antonio is planning to spend $170,000 of its public works budget to scrub the rainbow paint from crosswalks and then paint LGBT-themed rainbow sidewalks, prompting backlash from conservatives, including council members. Michael Rendon, a member of San Antonio's LGBTQ advisory board, recently told KSAT 12 that the city will be painting trans flags on the sidewalks as well. And ConservativeDailyNews.com reporting CBS News has abandoned a pro-transgender style guide and will adopt the term biological sex going forward. The senior director of standards and practices wrote in a memo on Tuesday. And female prisoners being punished for reporting rapes by transgender men, reports LifeSiteNews.com. It's a report on the Hill investigating journalist and mental health professional that detailed the horror showing unfolding in Americans' women's prisons where trans-identifying violent male inmates have their way with female inmates who cannot escape. Well, friends, I still have more stories here. We are out of time. We thank you for joining us here today on this News Roundup and Comments. This world is in need of Jesus. This world needs a heart transplant, a heart transformation that can be found only in Him. Do you know Christ as your Savior? If not, trust Him today. By the way, today is Friday and the Lord's Day is coming. Trust you'll be in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching local church. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.